Sergeant Melvin Faber, United States Army, Vietnam. Melvin's one of my Vietnam veterans. I interviewed him at the same time as Stuart Simonson, who I featured recently in Algona, Iowa. August 8th, 2007, I interviewed Melvin. Farm boy from Iowa, made good, and went to Vietnam in 1967, was drafted in September of 65, went to Vietnam in 67, was manning 81 millimeter mortars. He served with B Company of the 1st Battalion, 12th Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division. Melvin received a Bronze Star for his action and his gallantry in Vietnam. Great man, just a powerful story. So glad to be able to share this story with you today. I want to thank Mac Bentley. Mac, thank you, God bless you. I want to salute you. Thank you for making it possible for others to hear Melvin's story today. I thank you for your service, your patriotism to our country, and just having a heart and really wanting to help this project. So God bless you, Mac. Amen. Folks, if you'd like to sponsor a story, there's information in the video description below this video on my website, larrycapetto.com. Click on Sponsor a Vet. If you'd like to donate to my work, you can do so on the comment section of this video. I don't monetize these videos, no commercials here, folks. So I'm happy to bring these stories to you with the help of these viewers and listeners out there like you. And it's a great day. It's a great day to hear these stories. I don't have the luxury of entertaining people, but I'm bringing a true story where there comes an accountability and a responsibility, and a lot of people are hearing that. So many people watching these stories, and I'm just really, my heart's full as I share them with you. Encourage you to share them with others and to subscribe to this channel. Let's keep this thing going, folks. Freedom is not free, freedom is earned. And these veterans fought, they paid the price for these freedoms. Hopefully we're not going to lose them all in this country. Amen. All right, thank you and God bless you. Iowa then?
Yes.
Iowa farm boy, would I say that, or is that not correct? I mean,
No.
Did you join the military while you were living here in Iowa then?
Yes. I didn't join, I was drafted.
Drafted. What year was that?
1965, fall of 1965 in September.
What was the mood of the country that time towards Vietnam? Was there much, were people that aware of Vietnam at that time?
Probably not, because it was at the beginning of the war, and not a lot was emphasized on it or with it.
Now, you being drafted, was that a shock, or did you know it was coming?
Oh, I kind of knew it was coming. I was just hoping, you know.
Was it bad timing, or was it?
No, it was, I knew it was inevitable that I'd be drafted sometime.
And what about Vietnam? What did you know about Vietnam?
I knew very little. I hardly knew anything about it, because it was in the early stages of the war, and there wasn't much out about it. So.
How old were you when you were drafted?
I was 19.
Was it you grew up on a farm, right?
Right. Yes.
I mean, were a lot of other young men at that time, your peers, being drafted too? Or?
Yes, there was several in our community. In fact, there was probably at least 10 to 12 of us that was drafted the same time I was, that we went together.
Where'd you go to basic training?
I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training.
Was that a culture shock to leave here and go somewhere else?
Well, it was a different environment. I was not used to the military type of discipline, which you adjust fairly fast.
Does it change you? I mean, is that...
Oh, it definitely makes a man out of you.
So at what point did you realize that you're going to go to this place called Vietnam?
Well, I took basic training in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and I took advanced individual training at Fort Ord, California, and then after that, you're assigned, and I was assigned up at Fort Lewis, Washington, and I knew once I went there I was probably head across the pond.
So what company or division or battalion are you with this time?
When I was in...
Actually, when you went to Vietnam, what were you assigned?
I was assigned to Company B, 1st Battalion, 12th Infantry Regiment, the 4th Infantry Division.
And your rank?
I acquired the rank of sergeant.
And how about your title, your job position? What were you, your MOS?
I was 11C, which is classified as an indirect fire crewman, which meant I was on the mortars, 81 mortars, 81 millimeter mortar.
Can you tell me what you remember about your first time in country, arriving, and what you experienced?
Well, I'd never been probably out of the state of Iowa till I went into service, and it was different culture, which I was not used to seeing people of that ethnic type.
How about the geography of the country, the weather? What do you remember about any of that?
Well, it was very warm, very humid, probably like our warm time in the summer here, but a lot more humidity, a lot of rainfall. It came and went as you got into later on in the year. The monsoon season would cease, and then you'd have warm days and sunny days.
And you had one tour over there?
Yes.
Okay. So you're in country, you're a sergeant at this time?
No.
Okay.
I went over as I think a PFC, and I advanced to what they call a Spec 4. And later on I achieved the rank of sergeant.
Okay. Was that during your tour in Vietnam?
Yes. I had approximately 18. You had to have 18 months in of active duty to acquire that rank, and when I got my 18 months in, actually maybe a little before, I received my stripes.
Tell me about Vietnam. I mean, you're there, you're a young man, you've never been in combat before.
No.
What about you the first time you had combat? I mean,
Well,
do you remember that? And
yes.
Did you, like a lot of other guys say, you grew up fast, or baptism under fire, or all the above?
Yeah, you grew up fast. You learned to cover your rear end when you needed to, and you covered your friends, and they covered you. It was very scary, the first encounter I ever had. I was really scared. But as you live in the environment, you adapt to it, and eventually you adjust. You know who to trust, who not to trust. And when you acquire a trust for a person, you know who you can live or work with and who you can't.
So what was a normal, I don't know if you can say normal, a typical day in Vietnam for you? Was it the uncertainty of it, was that tough? And then just, I'm assuming you weren't fighting every day. So
No.
what was a typical day like?
Well, you got up about daylight and had your breakfast, your sea ration breakfast, and packed your gear up and got your pack board all ready, and you was given the command to move out, and you'd start moving out to wherever they were directed to go, whatever mission, whichever search and destroy mission you were assigned to do, which we didn't know. The company commander knew that, and we just followed along and did what we was told.
And as far as engaging the enemy, at what point and what type of engagement would you have when you would encounter the enemy? And are you fighting the NVA, the Viet
Yes,
Cong?
the NVA, North Vietnamese Organized Army. If you come in contact, it was definitely They shouldn't have been there. I mean, you was encountering them. So if you encountered somebody, I was up in the highlands, the northern highlands, and if you come in contact with somebody, it was the NVA. I mean, there was no village people in the area we were at. And if there was, they were to be in their villages by such and such a time, and if they weren't, then they were considered enemy.
So what are you carrying, an M16 or what?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And so you're a private at this time, or are you?
Probably a PFC when I first went over there.
So I'm trying to imagine these things as I ask the questions, but I mean, are you guys advancing as a line, as a column? I mean,
No.
Are you holding a position? What type of strategy or what type of objectives do you have as you're going through this tour in Vietnam?
Well, when you move in most of the time in a V formation, or try to, or 3 columns, with the middle column being in the lead and the flanks being back a ways. And then we followed that because we was the mortar. And we would, if we got a fire mission or encountered something, they would stop movement and set up a defensive position and send out patrols to see what the situation was. And then if it was nothing, we'd keep moving. If not, we'd encounter, call in artillery, call in air, call in whatever it took to break the contact.
What was the hardest part of what you had to do in Vietnam, Melvin?
I don't know. I guess living conditions weren't very favorable, but you kind of got used to that as a young kid. You were pretty tough. I don't know. I guess it wasn't that bad for me. As I
How about the worst thing that you saw?
Well, combat's never pretty. I mean, and there's instances that I don't talk about, but there's some bad situations sometimes that.
Did you lose any friends when
Oh,
you
yeah.
were killed while you were there?
Yeah.
Are you with them at the time, or did you hear about it later?
No, we was within several feet of each other at times. Not too often, but at times.
Are you able to help them when they're hurt, or is that just the medics that do all that?
Medics, you call for a medic and get them the help you can, and you can't just stop and tend them. If you're in heavy combat, you got to keep going. Because if it gets real serious, you could lose more than the one you're trying to work with, or work on, or for. You gotta defend. Put up a defensive position and hold your position.
So are you trained? I mean, for these situations, was your training sufficient to get you through it, or is it a matter of survival, or I mean, how do you get through these situations when they get like that tough?
Well, it's amazing how you can adjust, and you become pretty efficient. I mean, you know what to do, when to do. Training will not prepare you for combat, for heavy combat. It's just not the same. When you get into combat, it's a different thing, and you just learn how to do it. And pretty well everybody does. You get a few individuals that don't adjust, but the majority of the people, of the soldiers, will adjust, and they'll become very defensive.
How would you define combat?
Chaos at times. I mean, there's so much going on. There's yell and holler and directions being given, orders to do this, orders to do that, set up your gun, fire direction, coordinates. There's a lot going on, and it gets awful chaotic at times.
Is there a focus of what you're doing? Are you ever conscious of fighting for God and country, or is it just, like I said, a matter of survival when it comes to?
More often sometimes it's not even that. You do what you gotta do. You just do what you're trained to do, and you kind of overlook the dangers of it and do what you're told to do. And if you've got a officer or a ranking NCO that tells you what to do, you will do it. I mean, or it ain't good.
Did you ever feel invincible as a young man, like nothing could happen to you?
No, never. I was probably more on the scared side than I was the brave side, but that was my own way of it.
I've heard combat at times be described as there's no fear during the combat, but when it's over,
Yeah, that's true.
when you collapse physically, emotionally, all this stuff starts to hit you. Is that
Yeah.
kind of how you?
When you're hyped, you just go and you don't look, think about not getting wounded or killed. You just do your thing, and a lot of times after it all quiets down, you think, you wonder why you're still sitting here talking about it, and your buddy might be gone.
Is that something after the war, or you even came home, that survivor's guilt? Is that something that is common among combat veterans?
Oh, I think it is to a certain point. Some people can handle it better than others. I probably had a good faith, and I think I handle it quite well. And I think faith has a lot to do with it, to how you survive and how you carry on afterwards, after you return.
You ever hear the saying, there's no atheist in the foxhole?
Yeah, that's true. I very much believe that. I've seen it and I've heard it. I've seen it where guys say they're atheists, but they pray pretty hard when when things start flying.
Tell me about the enemy. Are they well trained?
They did quite well for how they were equipped. I mean, they were not very well equipped where I was, in the area I was from, or working in. They did very well for what they had. They were not well equipped. Their food supply was awful short. Gear was not good. Yeah, they did well for what they had.
Just as a reference, not that we're going to talk about what's happening today, but do reports that you hear today remind you of what happened in Vietnam, about what's happening overseas today? Does that ever bring back memories of Vietnam? Because the media is pretty involved in the thing.
To somewhat, but the type of combat they're encountering now is nothing like we encountered. It's quite a bit different, so I don't know how that works. I know where jungle warfare, how that worked, because I was involved with it, but city warfare, desert warfare, I don't know how that goes. I mean, I kind of know, but I don't know real well how.
When you came home from Vietnam, did you kind of put all your memories in a closet and forget about it?
Oh, you don't forget about it completely, but you try not to think about it any more than you have to. And the longer you're away from it, the less you think about it.
So that tour was 12 months?
Yes. I was a little shy of 12 months.
And I think I asked you on the phone, but most of your movement was by foot, right?
Right.
Very little helicopters?
If it was a long distance, we would move by birds. And
Huey helicopters, like I saw in that picture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you go on any combat assaults or
Oh, yeah.
search and destroy, whatever, all these different... Is that done via helicopter or not necessarily?
It can be, yeah. If it's a long distance, you will chopper in and fly into what they call a hot LZ. And
do you have any memories of that? Was that something that you remember, or is it
Oh,
just
yeah.
like flying in? Tell me what you remember about that particular mission, maybe flying into hot LZ, where you were, what you're doing, and how many guys were on board that Huey? How many troops?
Well, one particularly I remember, the worst one I was in, what we referred to as 501 North, and that was very hot, and we flew into that. It was...
What are you hearing flying into it, and what's going on inside the helicopter at that time?
A lot of noise. The choppers are loud. There's stuff burning, a lot of burning, because you're having airstrikes come in and they start stuff things afire. There's a lot going on.
I can imagine. Are you jumping off? You're not touching down probably, right?
No.
You guys are just jumping out?
No, we bail out just whatever the pilot starts hovering at, you unload. It might be 10 feet, it might be a couple feet, it might be more than that too sometimes.
That's got to be a helpless feeling being shot at and you can't do anything about it until you hit the ground, right?
Right. You want to get on the ground as quick as you can because you got more defensive being on the ground than you do up in that bird, because that bird is a moving target and they know that.
So tell me about the pickup of the anxiety level, the adrenaline, your faith in God as you're going into combat. I mean, are you praying? Are you helping somebody beside you to be strong? I mean, what goes through your mind during these times?
Well, you never want to come in a hot LZ if you don't have to, but more than often it will be. And if the chopper pilot's good, he'll get you on they know on the side where to come in at that's probably got the least action. And he'll get you in there the best he can. Sometimes they won't make it, but most time they do, and you've got just seconds to unload, and he's going to leave, and if you're not unloaded, you'll go back with him and come back the next time. But no, you're very nervous. I mean, you're wondering how hot the LZ is and how quick you can unload and get a defensive position set up so you're not a moving target for them.
Is it like the movies sometimes, the feet hanging out of the helicopter looking out, or is that just Hollywood?
No, it'll happen that way. I would say some of that is a little exaggerated in the movies, but there is some parts of them that is the way it is.
Did you see the movie We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson?
No. I went to one or two movies. One was called The Deer Hunter and one was A Green Beret, and it was so fictitious and out of line, I haven't been to one since.
That was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, We Were Soldiers, without having been there, but having talked with, was a pretty good. I mean, still some Hollywood.
I've heard it was a good movie to see. I never did see it. I haven't been back since, so I don't know.
I need to get you a copy of my documentary. It's not a movie. It's real life, right? No narration, just the veterans talking, and then some helicopter sounds. And I'll just let you watch it sometime.
That'd be great.
And you'll be part of my next one, so that'll be good at some point. But okay, as far as Vietnam, being a young man in combat, you mentioned your faith got you through a lot of the hard times, and I mean, as far as my questioning, as far as the combat, I'm not after the blood and guts of war. I'm really after the personal side of how it, what you guys went through. But having never done it, so that's why some of the questions I asked. But is there ever a point in your tour that it becomes routine, or is it just different every day?
Oh, in the area we were in, it was the terrain was quite similar most of the time, and you kind of set up a way of doing things that you kind of followed every day, and you kind of got accustomed to doing it that way, and it was kind of routine.
Would you go engage the enemy? Are they coming after you, or is it sometimes both? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
You would cross paths sometimes is what would happen, because we were always on search and destroy missions, and there was intelligence would tell you where they thought movement was, and then they would send you possibly to that area to search and destroy. And more often you would run into them accidentally more than intentionally. They were better at finding you than you finding them, because it was in their terrain, their environment where they lived, where we were not familiar with their terrain like they were. They could move in the area and know where to go and where to not go, where we didn't know that as well as they did.
Was it clear to you as troops at that time, early in the war, why you were over there, what we were fighting for?
No, I was too young. I've learned more since I come home than I ever did when I was there. I was young, and when you're in service, your commanding officer tells you what to do, and you just follow orders, and basically that's what we were doing. We had very little contact with the outside world. as far as like news, radio. We had no radio. Once in a while you'd get a newspaper from somebody, folks would send it home, send it to them from home. More often, we had no contact with the real world.
Did you ever get homesick and think thoughts like, this is sure different than being on the farm? Whoever thought I'd be fighting in Vietnam? I mean, did you ever think like that?
Oh yeah, you wondered why I'm here, what am I doing here? I should be at home, but that was my tour of duty and I had to do it, and I knew I had to do it. So I try to make the best out of it. I wouldn't say I always did, but you try to, because it's something you got to do, and the rougher you make it, the rougher you make it on yourself too.
Did you ever have a nickname?
Oh, I've called a lot of names, but
did you ever tell stories about being home on the farm?
oh yeah, everybody, that was a evening occurrence after you got settled in, got your position. You would talk about home. That was the main topic most of the time, what you was going to do when you got back home. So.
How about de-stressing or winding down from a mission? I mean, maybe after losing friends or whatever. I mean, how do you guys handle that? I mean, somebody talk to you, or what do you do?
No, we didn't have the support like they got nowadays. We just, I don't know, you just did it on your own more or less. You thought about it, and then tomorrow was another day, and you carried on with tomorrow's duties and kind of put the other ones out of your mind as much as you could. There was times, it was kind of hard to do, but that's part of the real world when you're in combat.
Did you ever think you might not make it, or?
Yeah, had instances where I didn't know if I'd come home or not, but, or Lord willing, I did.
So how does is life put into perspective at those times? I mean, you feel really mortal. I mean, you could be killed. I mean, do you ever have thoughts like, I feel like that when I fly in a plane.
Oh, yeah.
I'm out of control though.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're young though. I mean, I think they pick the young for a reason. So
right.
Maybe you're not thinking of those things.
Right.
You're not really thinking about that aspect of life. But you're doing your job. You train. During training though, do they train you to fight an enemy, and who did they identify as your enemy during your training?
Well, that's why I say what I said earlier. It's hard to train for combat. You can train, they can give you maneuvers to do and things, how to perform, but when you actually come in contact, it's not quite like the books tells you. So you learn to do what it takes. I mean, your training does come in effect, but probably not as much as your natural human instincts take over when the rubber meets the road.
It's kill or be killed, I hear.
Yeah, that's what they always try to get into your mind, but you can interpret that different ways too.
So when you came home, were you welcomed home? Hopefully by your family, but I mean, just the general public. Did you go through an airport, or what happened?
Yeah, I flew into San Francisco from Japan, and then from there I flew to Minneapolis and was met by my sister and brother-in-law, and my mother come and met me at the airport in California. And people in the Midwest were really receptive to military people and welcomed you and gave you a good homecoming.
Well, what happened in San Francisco? Did you have a uniform on when you landed? Did you have any problems with that?
Not then, no, because that was more, I come in on military transport, so I had no contact with civilian at the time. And when there's a group of military, then people would not heckle you. I mean,
were you in combat and then several days later you were home, or was there a lapsed time?
There was a possibly about a 2-week time period from the time I was notified that I'd be getting released to the time I left.
So I heard a lot of guys came home pretty quick, and that was hard on them.
Yeah. You usually always had a week from the time you left the field till you left country. And sometimes I come into fire support base and I spent a week there, and then I went into base camp, and then I spent almost another week before I flew out.
What about the help that there really wasn't any support systems like there are today for those guys coming back? And I've talked to a lot of guys with post-traumatic stress. I mean, is that anything you experienced, or was it you're able to transition from combat to civilian life again pretty easily?
Well, you don't just change overnight. It takes time. When you've been in the service for 2 years and come to the civilian world, it's an adjustment. But you're kind of glad you're there, so you adjust and kind of enjoy it.
Was it something you were proud of when you came home, or?
Oh yeah. In the Midwest, they look up to military.
I know I can sense it's different around here,
Mhm.
just by the response that I've had with this, what I'm doing here. For a small area, I've had a very large response. I'm very impressed with that. And,
Now the Midwest respect the military pretty highly, and honor them and do whatever it takes, to make them good, welcome.
and through the years, people know you're a Vietnam veteran?
Oh yeah.
Do you go out of your way to tell them, or is it just something
No.
that they acknowledge the fact
Yes,
that you are a Vietnam veteran?
they're very good at. I would say in my community that Vietnam veterans are looked up pretty highly. Probably like World War II was when they were fresh, coming home. But I know a Vietnam veteran is highly respected in our area.
So obviously you're proud to be a Vietnam vet. And people thank you for that.
Oh yeah,
How
yeah,
does that make you feel when they do
Good.
that?
real good.
What does Memorial Day or Veterans Day mean to you as
A lot.
veteran?
A lot. I participated now in about 30-some years, close to 40 years of activities every Memorial Day at our local town.
Now, you live in Algona?
No, I live in by Burt. I'm in the country.
How far away is that?
About 13 miles north of here. We have an activity every year on Memorial Day, and we march and have a speaker and read all the military graves that we have in our area there, and just a good military deal every year, every Memorial Day.
Do you think it's important that our young people today, Melvin, learn about what happened in Vietnam, and why? Why would you think that would be important?
Well, so they understand it, because sometimes they don't get the true picture of what went on there and reasons why. And sometimes if they really understand it, they might get a different opinion of the Vietnam veterans. Yeah.
Great.
And that's one more that was never spoke much of. You never got much publicity of the news media. If you did, it was not good. Where if they really knew how it went on and what went on, they would be more receptive to what you did.
What do you think our country should learn from Vietnam? What should we learn about about Vietnam?
Well, it didn't end up like it should have, I don't think. A lot of lives were lost, and it went back to the communist anyway, and that part is kind of hard to accept at times, because a lot of fighting went on there to save that country that ended up going back to where it was originally, which was not a free country then.
Have you ever been to the Vietnam Wall?
Yes, as I was.
Can you tell me about the first time you went, why you went, and what you felt?
Well, I went out to visit my sister and her husband out there, and they took us to the wall, and it was very impressive. I looked up some of my buddies' names up there and people I knew, and scribed them and brought them home, and it's worth seeing.
Yeah, I was there in March with some guys, and actually did a music video with a John Fogerty song, which is
Oh,
in my
great,
film.
great.
It's very moving.
Yes.
So,
I've seen two of the walls, the mobile ones, one in down Fort Dodge and one up in Fairmont, Minnesota. I seen them when they were around too.
great.
And that's good. I mean, it's a good deal.
So are the memories of Vietnam for you, are they fading, or does it seem like yesterday sometimes?
Well, it fades, age sets in, and your memory isn't as good as it was, but when I was awarded the Bronze Star here in March, it brought a lot of them back. I remember a lot of things more clearly than I did prior to that time.
Can you
So,
tell me the citation for the Bronze Star, where you were and what you did to get that?
well, we encountered pretty stiff action up on Hill 501 North, and C Company had gone in to form a support base, and they encountered, I don't know how many units, but they encountered several, and we were brought in to support it, and my gun was the only mortar gun there at the time, because the other ones couldn't get in, and we set up our gun and did defensive actions for the line people, and I guess saved them, the way I find out now. I didn't know at the time, but I've got the write-up that the after-action report tells what went on. I learned more about it then than I ever knew before.
I bet the citation reads a little bit, what's the word? Oh, they're usually, they sound so much different than the actual veteran telling the story. I mean, they're for courage and bravery, and under fire, you did this, you did that, and maybe you hauled out the wounded, or you fired, and I mean, is there anything you're missing from that citation you didn't tell me?
No.
The bravery and the courage that you displayed. I mean, I know you guys don't go into all that, but to you, I mean, was it a time that was important, that you acted the way you did and you saved lives, or, you know?
Just did what we'd normally do in any other situation. It proved to be more beneficial, this particular one, than any other ones. And at the time, I didn't know, I just did my thing. And as time went on, I've seen after-action reports, and it was way more critical than I ever knew it was. And that's makes you feel good that somebody acknowledged it. I've got to thank one of my squad members for doing it, because he's the one that pursued it for me.
Yeah. So you came home from Vietnam in '66 then?
67.
'67.
Mm-hmm.
So the war's still going on, you're home, I mean, your friends still going over, are you getting reports back, or is it just something?
Yeah, I got a few letters back from guys, but as time went on, they dwindled, and them guys moved on, and so the guys I went over as a unit, not as a replacement, which is a little different. We went over as a division, and you trained with all the men in my company and my squad. Most of them were all in there. We never got replacements till into December, and you don't know a replacement as well as you do the guys you worked with all while you was in training.
Which division was this again?
4th
Okay.
Infantry,
So you
the
guys
IV division.
Deployed as a unit. That's
Yes,
good.
yes.
Yeah.
We moved out of up in Washington as a division, Fort Lewis, Washington, and went over on the ship as a full division.
Are there sights, sounds, or smells that bring back Vietnam today?
Yeah.
Can I ask what?
Oh, gunpowder smell is pretty prominent when you pick that up. There's smells and sounds that will wake you up. It does me in a way. And why it does, I don't know, but it's sounds that I can remember from back over there.
How about helicopters flying overhead?
I can tell them from miles away. In fact, we was in the yard one day, and my sons are all grown up, and I heard one. There was a unit, must have been on training or something. I said, "There's a Huey," and it was. It was way off in the distance, and I heard it, and as it come through, that's what it was.
Did you ever help load the wounded onto a Huey at medevac?
Mm-hmm.
Where were you? What was going on?
Chaos. You just got them loaded and got them out as quick as you could. You didn't worry what condition they were in. You just got them out best you could.
How much time elapses once they're wounded? I mean, and who calls the medevacs in?
Our company commander does all that. You just, when they come in, when they say medevac coming in, evacuate so-and-so, and they're tagged, that's what you do. You don't ask no questions, you just do what you're told.
Obviously, it's not a pretty sight sometimes, huh?
Mm.
Yeah. And then, as far as your involvement with the Hueys, like you said, it was limited, right? It wasn't like all the time.
Oh, we moved, if it's long distances, if we was going to a different AO, which is area of operation, even if it was several thousand meters away, they would usually chopper us across, but I've known to move 5,000 to 6,000 meters on foot to get to a different location too. But most of the time, if they wanted to get you there fast, if there was contact and they needed support, then probably you'd be choppered in, which happened several times while I was there.
When you look at some of your pictures from Vietnam, what are you thinking about? You know, that was this long time ago as a young kid, or do you still bring back memories to see yourself in those pictures? Or?
Oh, you never forget, I mean, unless you die, but you remember, and you look at a picture and you, oh yeah, I remember that. And it's fun to look at them, especially with your buddies, and then somebody says, well, don't remember this, and you'll say, well, you remember that, and you get a whole bunch of new ideas of what went on there, and brings back ideas, you know, that you had probably forgotten.
Tell me what freedom means to you as a veteran and as an American citizen. What does freedom mean to you?
Well, freedom's pretty important. Freedom's not free, and people that don't understand that should understand it, because there's a price for freedom, and it's paid, sometimes paid dearly. I think freedom's great.
And the price for freedom, what would you tell a young person today who takes their freedom for granted? What would you tell them about the price for freedom?
Well, freedom's not free. Somebody pays for freedom. And sometimes it's you or somebody else, but they better appreciate it.
How about the American flag? What does it mean and represent to you as a veteran?
Flag is really important. The flag is what we defended.
Now, how did you found out about what I'm doing to the funeral home here? They notified you, or
Yes. Victor stopped out. I believe I was not home, and left a pamphlet or something, some
At the
information
house,
at our house where we
Okay.
live.
Like a flyer or something?
Yeah, I think it was something.
Well, did it get your attention? Did it something that you maybe thought you might want to do?
Well, I didn't know the whole what it was about or what it was for, so I didn't do too much about it. I just kind of let it be. And then we had our VFW meeting last month, and I think Reg Roberts was there, and he told me more about it, but I still didn't understand it all. And then when you called, it was more important to me then.
Great.
They had mentioned your name, but I'm not too aggressive at pursuing things at times, but if somebody pursues me, I will follow up.
So you, I think I've already asked you, but as far as what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, you know, the historical value, the educational value, I think that's important for our young
Yes,
people
very
today.
much so. Every young person should listen and see as much about what freedom is, where it comes from, and what it costs, so they appreciate it more and live as though they're getting it for free.
Well, I appreciate you talking to me. I mean, it's just, you know, have you ever done an interview like this or
No.
something?
No, I've not. It's kind of at times hard for me to talk about it, but if somebody takes the lead, I can kind of follow.
Well, I think there's areas of combat that all of you guys share that you're never going to tell anybody, and that's not my purpose. But you know, that's something that you went through. But you know, and I'm looking at it from a little different perspective. Although I've heard almost 500 combat stories in 5 years, so I've heard a lot of.
Sure, yeah, I'm sure.
Everywhere from World War II up to Iraq. So, but it's an interesting study for me, and to see and the changes that happen. And I don't know if I could have done it as a young man. When I see these guys in World War II landing on Omaha Beach on D-Day or on Iwo Jima, I mean, and then the Japanese or the Germans, I mean, 18, 19, 20 years old, that's amazing what they did. You know, and then you guys in Vietnam and the guys in Korea, it's just amazing. It blows my mind.
Yeah, you get trained and you learn and you just do your thing. I mean, you do your job because that's what you're told to do.
Did you have brothers in the service?
No, I'm an only boy.
Okay. And they sent you to war? I thought they couldn't do that.
I didn't object to it.
You could have stayed home? Yeah, okay. Yeah. How'd your parents feel at the time? Supportive or afraid or?
I'm sure my mother was awful nervous or upset that I went, but I guess I never thought about not going.
So you were drafted. Was there an option right then to not go, or how did that work?
If you're a sole surviving son, you do not have to go into combat.
Sole surviving meaning you're carrying the family name, or
you're the only boy in that family.
so at what point were you able to say I don't want to go, or is it after you're drafted or before you're drafted?
No, when you get your orders. When I got my orders for Vietnam, I could have objected to them and told them I was a sole surviving son and I would have got reassigned, but I.
So tell me the story. Was this you anticipating this as a family that, you know, don't do this, or and then you say I'm going to do it, or tell me that story?
It was never discussed. My mother never talked about it. I didn't talk about it. I trained with all these guys, and they're kind of like family to you, so. If I was reassigned, I'd have to be in a different group, and I trained from basic training to deportation with them, and I just kind of wanted to stay with them. I don't know why I did. I did, though.
Well, that's good. Yeah. You think the Vietnam veteran has gotten a bad rap over the years in the country?
Well, in certain parts of the country, I think he has, but if people would learn to watch these complimentaries and review things, learn what we were working at or toward, maybe if they understood it, they'd have different feelings toward them. War is never good, but you can improve things with war, too.
Well, I think I'm about done asking questions, unless there's something that maybe I haven't asked you that you felt like you wanted to tell me, but we've covered a lot of ground.
Well, I'm just thankful that you did this interview with me, and I hope it gets to the right ears and they understand where we come from.
Well, it'll be a part of a story, again, that I'm building. The first one I did, I interviewed over 70 Vietnam vets. And it's hard to include everybody in every story, but you've shared enough today where you'll be part of this next film, so which I'll be hopefully getting out within the next 12 months. So But is there anything that maybe you're thinking about I should ask? I think he's done a good job.
He has done a marvelous job.
I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. At the
Okay.
end of my interviews, now I understand the protocol of a salute, but for the camera's sake, and you've got a hat on, when I ask you, could you give me a salute into the camera?
I sure
Can I
can.
tell you to? Okay. I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to ask you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, right in the camera, go ahead. Great, thank you. That's one of the better ones. Although I'm not grading them, so.